Good day, everyone. My name is Rafit Bakayan. For today's topic, I'm going to discuss what is metacognition, components of metacognition, cognitive regulation and control, and metacognitive teaching strategies. First, let's talk about what is metacognition. Metacognition from the Greek word meta means higher or beyond, and Latin word cognitio means thinking. It is the knowledge and understanding of our own cognitive processes, abilities, and those of others, as well as regulation of these processes. Metacognition is introduced by Fevre in 1979. According to him, metacognition is an individual's knowledge of their own cognitive process by organizing, monitoring, and modifying them as a function of learning. In other words, it is the awareness and regulation of how you learn, think, and solve problems. By understanding of our own thinking, we can identify our knowledge gaps, choose appropriate learning strategies, and adjust our approach in learning. Now let's proceed to the components of metacognition. There are two components of metacognition, the metacognitive knowledge and metacognitive regulation. First, let's talk about what is metacognitive knowledge. This refers to what individuals know about their own cognitive processes and how these processes work in general. It means what you know about your own thinking and learning. It is essentially a person's awareness and understanding of their own thinking. Here is an example of metacognitive knowledge in a classroom setting. In high school science class, the teacher asked the students to reflect on how they studied for the recent test. One student says, I realized that just reading the textbook wasn't helping me remember the key concepts. So I start summarizing each context in my own words and quizzing myself afterwards. That worked much better for me. Based sa example, ang student is aware of their own learning process because they notice what strategies did or didn't work. Sunod, they select and adopt the strategies which is summarizing and self-quizzing. And there are types of metacognitive knowledge: the declarative knowledge, procedural knowledge, and conditional knowledge. First, let's talk about declarative knowledge. This refers to the functional information that you can consciously recall and express. It means it's knowing what you know. It is the awareness of your strengths, weaknesses, learning styles, and preference. Example is when you're preparing for an exam, you realize that you remember information better when you write it. It means kanang mag-notes ka, mas maka-remember ka sa imong mga tun-anan kung nakay notes, nakay basahon nga notes. Next, procedural knowledge refers to the knowledge of how to perform a task or carry out processes. This is knowing how to do things by understanding the strategies and processes to complete a task. Example yapon kay preparing yapon for an exam. Kanang kabo ka mo gamit og flashcards para maka-memorize ka sa imong mga gistudihan. You use flashcards as a memorization technique na. Next, the last one, conditional knowledge refers to knowing when and why to apply the declarative and procedural. This helps the student to choose the right approach in different situations. Example is Magyapon, preparing for an exam. Choose flashcards for the definitions, then practice questions for the concepts. Now, let's proceed to the second component of the metacognition, the metacognitive regulation. This refers to the ability to monitor and control one's own cognitive progress during the learning. It involves active planning, monitoring comprehension and evaluating one's learning progress to optimize performance. It means controlling your own thinking. It is the action and strategies of individuals used to control their learning and thinking. Here is an example of metacognitive regulation in a classroom setting. The scenario is a student preparing for an history test. First, the planning. Before studying, the student look at the test outline provided by the teacher. Then, decides to review lecture notes and key terms. Dayon, schedules 1 hour for review and 30 minutes for practice questioning. Based sa example, ang students kay nag-setting a goal and selecting strategies for studying. The second, monitoring. While studying, the student notice they remember facts from World War I well but struggles with World War II events. Then they ask themselves, do I understand this timeline? Then they decide to slow down and reread the section on World War II. So sa monitoring, they're checking their understanding and adjusting their pace accordingly. Kaya naglisod man sila sabot sa World War II events, gi-slow down jud nila di ilang gibasa balik kato nga section sa World War II para makasabot sila. Then sa evaluating, they assess their performance and think about how to improve. Sa example, the student is regulating their thinking by planning how to study, dayon monitoring their learning during the session, and then evaluating the effectiveness afterward. The next is metacognitive regulation and control. It is a process of self-observation that is involved monitoring, evaluating for cognitive strategies to see if they're on track to achieve our goals. Regulation is the ability to monitor, control, and direct your own cognitive process, while the control it is used interchangeably with the regulation, but sometimes it's referred more specifically for implementing strategies to control learning. This regulation and control is often intertwined with self-regulating learning. Self-regulated learning involves active planning, monitoring, and evaluating one's cognitive process and learning. It is essentially being aware of and manage your own thinking and learning. Now, let's proceed to the last part of our discussion, which is the metacognitive teaching strategies. This focus on helping students become aware of and regulate their own learning process. This encourage it is encouraging the students to plan their approach to task, monitoring their understanding while reading or working on a problem, and evaluate their own learning strategies. Here is some examples of metacognitive teaching strategies. First, think aloud. A teacher verbalizes the thoughts process while performing a task. Example is solving a math problem or reading a passage. Here are some examples of metacognitive teaching strategies. First, thinks aloud. The teacher verbalizes the thought process while performing a task. Example is solving a problem or reading a passage. In Thinks Aloud, the students heard how a skilled thinker approaches a problem, makes decisions, handles confusion, and evaluates progress. Next, self-questioning. The students generate questions to guide and monitor their own learning. In self-questioning, the students ask themselves reflective questions before, during, and after a task, so they can stay focused and assess their understanding. Lastly, learning journals, reflective logs. Students keep a written record of their learning experience, including success, struggles, and strategies to use. Example ani is kanang skills inventory, like kanang box na nice statement na statement na statements nga nakabutang dayon, chika nimo if strongly agree, agree, disagree, or strongly disagree ka. And that's all for today. Thank you for listening.